Hey YouTube, I wanted to make this video because I saw a tweet by some prominent tech dude. I forgot his name, regrettably, but he had asked his followers, who are your favorite authors and what is your favorite book? And the two most popular responses overwhelmingly were Siddartha by Herman Hesse and 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. So I started thinking to myself, well, why are these the two books that people are most gravitating towards? These people who follow this dude in tech Twitter, tech Twitter itself is very much so like a, it's all high performing people, quote unquote high performing, at least in terms of their career. People who want to are interested in innovation, interested in high performing, well paying jobs, are also interested in just the way in which people who have accomplished things in the world think of the world. So it's no surprise that 0 to 1 is there, and to an extent it's no surprise that Siddartha is there. But it is fascinating that those are the two books that people are most gravitating towards, because I think that these two books are kind of antithetical to each other. I think 0 to 1 is by Peter Thiel. It tells the story of one of the most famous venture capitalists / entrepreneurs of our generation. Peter Thiel co-founded PayPal as well as Palantir, and he was the first angel investor in Facebook. So he's had this legendary career in tech and innovation. And 0 to 1, his book, basically talks all about how a company goes from zero, i.e. not existing, to becoming a thing. How does PayPal go from just being an idea that he had / he and Elon Musk had, to being the dominant way in which people transact on the internet, at least for most of the 2000s. So he kind of talks about that. He gives examples. It's very efficient. It's very on point to how do you build a monopoly type company that exerts market domination. Well, in the complete opposite realm is Siddartha. Siddartha is all about this guy named, Siddartha, who is not the Buddha. So Herman Hesse, the author, he's a German guy. He writes the story about Siddartha, which is the name of the Buddha if you're at all interested in spirituality or whatever. But this is not the Buddha. This is a random dude named Siddartha during the time of the Buddha. I hope I've gotten that into your head, because a lot of my friends are like, oh, you're reading a book about, the Buddha or whatever. A lot of people, myself included, when we went into the book, thought it would be about the Buddha, but it's not. But what's interesting about Siddartha is that it is also another book that has a cogent philosophical take, but it's not at all like 0 to 1. It's all about, the writing style is obviously different. It's fiction. 0 to 1 is nonfiction. But it's all about this idea of a guy who's restless and doesn't know what his meaning is in life. And he tries to find that meaning, originally by being kind of a monk and listening to all of these sage gurus and being able to starve himself and go without eating and reject materialism. And then that doesn't work out for him, so then he assumes, okay, maybe materialism is good. And this is where I think it most conflicts with 0 to 1, because I think that 0 to 1 is, if anyone who reads that book is probably someone who's a firm capitalist, wants to do well. Whereas Siddartha, the way he talks about people who are, or Herman Hesse in Siddartha, the way he talks about people who are in that bubble of commerce and society the way we view it, he calls them literally the child people. He calls them they're infantile, basically. They're only obsessed with material items. They're not obsessed with their sage wisdom. And Siddartha himself also leans into that. He becomes wealthy, and I don't want to spoil the book for you, but he also he leans into it, and it doesn't change Herman Hesse's statement about the yuppie type people or the wealth in general. And the cogent philosophy of that is just, in order to find a philosophical meaning in this life, you just have to go and find it. So I think in some ways I understand how there's a similarity between the two, because I understand how, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and a lot of the people who read 0 to 1 are entrepreneurial people, you have this restlessness that's in you. You have this desire to exert yourself on the system in a way in which the system has not exerted itself, or it doesn't exist yet. And that's what your goal is, I guess. But, at the end of the day, I do think it's so fascinating that, this is where people are going, these opposite ends of things. I think that, That itself for me is the takeaway, that these two very opposite books are the types of things that people are reading. And I think it's because, to an extent, we are all feeling that kind of like lostness that's in Siddartha. And I think to another extent, we're all trying to like find that meaning through like the Peter Thielian, entrepreneurial, it's better to have success in the system, even if you are a child person, than it is to like leave the system. And I don't know if they're like irreconcilable, but they are very different, and it's just fascinating that that's the case. Anyway, I hope you guys have been well, and I look forward to creating more content. Take care.